Hello, everyone. My name is Christy McKenzie. I'm the Assistant Coordinator of Neighborhood Services for the Erie County Department of Senior Services. I would like to welcome you all to the 2021 Virtual Elder Law Day Summer Series. This series will continue to run throughout the summer, including a variety of topics, every Tuesday and Wednesday at 10 a.m. I would also like to take a minute to thank those individuals who have helped make the summer series possible again this year, including our County Executive, Mark Holenkars, our Senior Services Commissioner, David Schenk, and Karen Nicholson, the CEO for the Center for Elder Law and Justice. A few things to mention. This video will be recorded and available on YouTube later. We are also offering a question and answer panel on the right-hand side. All questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Please refrain from including any personal information. Please allow me to introduce our guest speaker, Gary Brown. Gary is a statewide elder abuse coordinator for the New York Attorney General Letitia James. He is also the Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Attorney General's Westchester Regional Office. Mr. Brown is the co-chair of the Westchester Elder Abuse Coalition and serves on the county's multidisciplinary team on elder abuse. And he is a member of the Financial Exploitation Advisory Board of the National Adult Protective Service Association. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Christy, and good morning, everybody. As you heard, my name is Gary Brown. I'm the statewide elder abuse coordinator for Attorney General Letitia James. And what I'm going to do this morning is, at the outset, walk you through the type of complaints that we've gotten at the AG's office since the pandemic started. And then I'm really going to focus on the scams, both new scams as well as some of the older scams that have evolved during the pandemic. But let me just start out by saying that at the outset of the pandemic, the biggest complaint we got was about price gouging. We received over 7,700 price gouging complaints during the spring of last year. And you may remember things like toilet paper, paper towels, bleach, disinfecting wipes. Items like that were hard to find and were very expensive. We issued more than 1,900 cease and desist letters to businesses telling them to stop gouging. We sued a major egg distributor for the same reason. And then all of a sudden, the price gouging seemed to settle down in the summer of 2020. We think for two reasons. One, that the manufacturers ratcheted up production of these key items to meet demand. And also, I think that we all stopped panic buying and hoarding perhaps as much as we were during the outset of the pandemic. And so we're not getting many, if any, price gouging complaints anymore. There was concern when the gas pipeline was hit by a ransomware attack that there might be gasoline price gouging, and we were on the lookout for that about a month ago, but it didn't occur in New York. The other type of complaint that we got a lot of last year during the outset of the pandemic are what we're calling refund cancellation complaints. People booked venues for weddings, bought tickets to events that never happened, venues were closed, and we've been trying to do our best to get money back for people if you're in that position. Just today, in fact, the AG announced that we received over $427,000 in restitution for people who had booked events at the Green Tree Country Club in New Rochelle. None of those events were able to go off due to the pandemic. So if you're in that position, please reach out and contact the AG's office. I've already posted our contact information in the chat box if you need to see it. The other thing that we saw at the outset of the pandemic, and it's continuing, and this falls under the headline of scammers follow the headlines, which are fake treatments, lotions, and potions, and all kinds of cures supposedly, and treatments for COVID-19. The Federal Trade Commission has sent warning letters to hundreds of companies and individuals that are selling and advertising fake cures, fake treatments, fake preventive therapies for COVID-19. Many of these products and services are aimed at older adults since they're more vulnerable to COVID and more likely to have underlying medical conditions that put them at greater risk. Examples of the kind of product that was claimed could treat or prevent COVID-19 were cannabinol, colloidal silver, vitamin C therapy, electromagnetic field therapy, ozone therapy. There was a company in Texas that was claiming mare's milk, that's horse milk, could help people recover from COVID-19. There was a company in Canada that was selling a tea that it claimed could prevent COVID-19. Radio talk show host Alex Jones was hawking a super blue toothpaste. Televangelist Jim Baker was hawking a silver solution. None of these, of course, were really treatments or cures for COVID-19. Even here in my home county of Westchester, there was a spa in Yonkers that was claiming that its therapeutic regimens could prevent and treat COVID-19. We've had to put a stop to all that kind of stuff. Now, the number one complaint that the Federal Trade Commission has received during the pandemic is online shopping. meaning that people are going online, they're purchasing items, paying for them, and then not receiving them. Online shopping has also led to an increase in identity theft. And if there's one particular area where we've seen a real problem of people paying for items online and never getting them, is when it comes to pets. During the pandemic, a lot of people have wanted to take on a pet. They've gone online. They're promised the pet will be delivered or shipped to them in some fashion. They pay in advance and the pet never arrives. So be very careful if you're buying a pet online. You want to actually probably see that pet and buy it locally rather than buying it and having it shipped from somewhere from a distant location. But all of this means that the classic online shopping tips apply more than ever. Purchase from reputable sites you've heard of and dealt with before. And really, most importantly, always pay by credit card, so that if you don't receive the merchandise you ordered, you can file a dispute with a credit card company. They're not going to make you pay for an item you didn't receive. On the other hand, if you send cash or a check, or you provide some other method of payment, getting the money back can be much harder. And in particular, I want to make a warning about use of debit cards for this. Let me put it to you this way. When you buy something and you pay by credit card, you get a bill at the end of the month. It's payable maybe 3 weeks later. It gives you some time to know before you pay whether you've received the item. When you pay by debit card, the money is removed from your account immediately. And if you later realize you didn't get what you paid for, you're in the much worse position of trying to get your money back rather than disputing the charge in the first place. And even when it comes to credit cards, if you did pay in full and then you dispute the charge, it's much easier to deal with the credit card companies about getting a charge back than it can sometimes be about dealing with banks to get your money back. And think about one other thing. In the event that you happen to get scammed or spoofed and you give your credit card number to someone who's going to misuse it and commit identity theft, you're going to get a bill, you're going to dispute the charges. If your debit card is misused in the same way, your bank account can be cleared out. And so we really urge you to be very careful about the use of debit cards. If there's one complaint that we've seen a ton of in New York, I'm sorry to say, it's false unemployment claims. People are getting letters from the Department of Labor about the unemployment insurance claim that they never filed. Now, the good news is that in the vast majority of these cases, the Department of Labor is not making payment on these fraudulent claims. But the bad news is that it means if you get a letter such as that, and many thousands of New Yorkers have gotten them, it means that your name, your address, and most importantly, your social security number were obtained by the scammer. So there are some immediate things you need to do. You need to let the Department of Labor know. You need to let your employer know. And you also want to go into identity theft prevention overdrive because you know your social security number has been compromised. You may want to place a freeze on your credit report or place a fraud alert. You may want to change passwords on some of your accounts. I posted in the chat box the website identitytheft.gov. That's the Federal Trade Commission's website, and it has really wonderful information step by step about what to do if you're a victim of identity theft, and in particular, if you're a victim of identity theft related to a false unemployment claim. Now, scammers follow the headlines, as I mentioned before, and so when vaccines first became available, but it was very hard to get an appointment, we saw a lot of scammers online saying that for a fee, they could put you on a list and get you jump the line, get you an appointment that you couldn't otherwise get. So that was a problem. Those scams have gone away because nowadays the vaccine is so widely available that no one would fall for it. But at the time when it was very hard to get a vaccination, that was a problem. And I've been reading in the newspaper just the last couple of days that there's a huge delay to get a passport renewed. And my concern is that this is going to lead to scams as well. That if you have to wait 8 or 9 months to get your passport renewed, scammers are going to go online and tell you that for a fee, they can help you jump the line and get it renewed quicker. So be on the lookout for that and don't fall for it. Now, I'm going to segue now into talking about some of the classic scams, ones we've seen before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and I'm sure we're going to see afterwards. And if there's one thing I want to start out by saying is that seniors are often targeted for these scams. And with so many seniors using the internet, online scams are an increasing concern. We did a study in New York in 2016 to try to quantify how much money is lost to elder fraud in New York State. We came up with a figure of $1.5 billion a year. It's a lot of money. And yet I'm certain that that's a lowball estimate because the reality is that only 1 in 44 people, elder fraud victims, ever report it. There's a reluctance to admit it. Why are people reluctant to admit they've been victimized? Well, sometimes they're in denial. Sometimes they blame themselves. Sometimes they're ashamed. Sometimes if the abuser is a family member, there's a codependency or a loyalty. But I've come to realize that there's another factor that really deters a lot of older victims of these crimes and frauds from reporting it. And that's the fear of loss of self-control. I gave a presentation a couple of years ago, and I talked about the grandparent scam, which I'll get back to in a few minutes. And afterwards, a woman came up to me and she told me that she had been fallen victim to the grandparent scam. She had lost $3,000. And then she started hugging me and thanking me. And I wasn't quite sure why she was doing that. So I said, "Why are you hugging and thanking me?" And she said, "Because you're the first person I've ever told. And it feels so good to finally get this off my chest." I was surprised. I said, "Really? You didn't tell your adult children? You didn't tell your grandson?" And she looked at me and she said, "Oh no. If they knew I fell victim to a scam like this, they'd think I've lost it. It's time to take over my finances, maybe put me in assisted living or a nursing home." She said, "I'd rather suffer the loss of money in silence than risk the loss of self-control that I fear could happen if I told anybody." So that figure of 1.5 billion is a lowball figure. It's a lot more than that. And that's why we do presentations like this, because as you're going to hear me explain, for the most part, we cannot catch these phone and internet scammers. And even more rarely can we recover money from victims. But these are preventable scams if you know how they work. And so that's why we've really ratcheted up our prevention efforts through presentations like this morning, to let you know how these scammers are trying to rip you off so you won't become a victim in the first place. There's a misconception that people have about scams. It's that people think the scammers are trying to outsmart us. But in reality, what they're really trying to do is to push our emotional buttons, to prey on our emotions so that we're really not thinking at all. We're reacting based on our emotions, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a few minutes. But I think the best example I can give of the fact that it's not about intelligence, it's about emotions, is to briefly mention the biggest con artist in the history of the United States of America. He stole $60 billion. He just passed away a few weeks ago. I'm talking, of course, about Bernie Madoff. Excuse me. And when you look at who Madoff's victims were, they were not dumb people. They were among the smartest and most sophisticated individual and institutional investors in the United States. For example, the Wilpon family, who until recently owned the New York Mets baseball team and who are also very successful real estate developers, lost tens of millions of dollars to Madoff's Ponzi scheme. Why? Not because they're dumb, because Madoff promised unbelievably high and guaranteed returns. Madoff pushed the greed button. And I think there's an element of greed in all of us. Deep down, we all want to be the grand prize winner. We all want to pay the lowest price. We all want the best return on our investment. And scammers like Madoff will try to take advantage of that. And so I'm going to go through these scams and explain what emotional button the scammer is trying to push in each case. Now, if it seemed to you that the volume of robocalls and scam calls you got had dropped during the first few months of the pandemic, you're absolutely right. Maybe the scammers were under lockdown themselves, but they're back at it now. In February, New York had already gotten up to 9.3 calls per month. And then in June, the number of scam calls to New Yorkers was up to 14 per month. So they're back. How do these scammers work? Well, they're going to try to get you to feel some emotional button, push your emotions so that you're not reacting based on your thought process. They're going to seem like there's somebody trustworthy or believable. And here's the big red flag. They're going to tell you that there is an urgent deadline, that if you don't act immediately, either something really bad is going to happen to you, or you're going to lose out on this once in a lifetime opportunity for something good to happen to you. Now, when you think about it, if someone makes a legitimate offer to you today, it should still be on the table tomorrow. And when someone tells you you've got to act now, you don't have time to call anyone, consult with anyone, it's a huge red flag. And so be wary of that. The most common phone scam we've seen in the history of this country is the so-called IRS scam, the Internal Revenue Service scam, where the caller says he's an IRS agent, that you owe back taxes, and if you don't pay up today, we're going to come and arrest you. Now, when you think about it, there are elements of the scam that don't make sense. For starters, does the IRS call you on the phone if you owe money? No, they communicate in writing. Do they threaten you with same-day arrest if you don't pay your taxes? Of course not. Do they tell you to pay your taxes by going to a store, buying gift cards, and calling back with the serial numbers? Of course not. You pay by check. But if you don't know that this call is a scam, what's the emotion you're going to feel? You're going to feel fearful. And I think deep down, we're all kind of scared of the IRS anyway, so this scam preys on that deep-seated fear. Now, the IRS scam was successful. It's been estimated 49 out of 50 people did not fall for it, but that means 1 out of 50 people did. And when you multiply that by the millions and millions of calls that were made into the United States, it translates into many victims and millions of dollars lost. But in recent years, we've seen a shift. Instead of the con artist pretending to be an IRS agent, he's more often now claiming to be with the Social Security Administration. He says there's a problem with your account, and he'll start out by saying that he needs to confirm you're the person he's trying to reach by asking you to provide your social security number. If you do that over the phone, it's then going to be used to commit identity theft. The scammer may also say that there's a fine or a payment that's due and tell you to go buy gift cards and call back with a serial number. And of course, the Social Security Administration does not call you on the phone, and this is a scam. But again, if you're made to think that this could be real and you're fearful of having your Social Security benefits interrupted, it's enough to maybe get people to act and to go buy the gift cards and call back with the serial numbers. I mentioned earlier the grandparent scam, and this is the scam that gets me, I think, the angriest, because the emotion that it uses to rip people off is the love of a grandparent for a grandchild. What stronger emotion is there than that? And the way it typically works is the caller pretends to be the grandson, says he's been arrested, says, "Grandma, I need bail money." He'll often start out by saying, "Grandma, it's your favorite grandson calling," because he doesn't even know the name of the grandson he's impersonating. And if Grandma says, "It doesn't sound like you," he'll say, "Oh, well, I've been in jail for 48 hours with nothing to eat or drink," or something to that effect. Dr. Ruth Westheimer, the famous TV psychotherapist, came this close to falling for the grandparent scam. She was literally on her way to the store to buy the gift cards that the imposter, pretending to be her grandson, had told her to buy, when luckily Dr. Ruth's daughter called her. And Dr. Ruth said angrily, "You know, your stupid son got himself arrested for drunk driving in Canada, and now I've got to bail him out." And Dr. Ruth's daughter said, "He's with me now. He wasn't arrested at all." So Dr. Ruth luckily did not fall for the scam. She instead participated with us in preparing a public service announcement to warn about it. So Christy, if you could cue up the grandparent scam video, let's take a look.
Grandma, I love you so much, and I never, ever want to see you get hurt.
Hello? Grandma, I need help.
There's a very pervasive telephone scam targeting older adults. It's called the grandparent scam.
We've had doctors and lawyers fall for this. It doesn't really matter what your educational level is, because it triggers something emotional that causes you to act.
The other morning, I go to Woken, the phone rings, and somebody says, "This is your grandson. Please don't tell my parents." But we got arrested last night in a rented car. They found drugs, and I need bail.
When I heard you were in trouble, went to the bank, bought the cards, sent them out. I thought that I was doing a good thing.
This is a preventable scam if people know about it. And in particular, we've tried taking an intergenerational approach by working with students at the high school level to enlist them to be fraud fighters to warn their own parents and grandparents about the scam.
Grandma, don't fall for the scam, please. I care about you. I don't want your money getting taken away ever again.
Say words that say, "Hey, Grandma, if you get a call this summer from someone who says it's me and that I'm in trouble and you need to send money quickly, ask me some questions that only I would know the answer to."
Grandma, what was the name of our first dog?
If I don't call you Grandma Vita, it's not me.
What was my first word I said when I was a baby?
If you ask me about my hair and I say that I have it, it's not me.
Don't listen to the caller. They'll try to isolate you. Do everything you can to verify that the problem is legitimate before you send money. The goal is that everybody becomes aware of the scam so it simply won't work anymore. Maybe there's a grandparent who doesn't get out much, but a word from that person's grandchild might make all the difference in saving them from becoming a victim of the scam. So we've seen a twist in the grandparent scam during the pandemic. Usually what the caller would say, he would instruct Grandma to go out and buy gift cards and call back with a serial number. But now more often, the caller isn't pretending to be the grandson. He's pretending to be a court official or a bail bondsman or something like that, calling about your grandson who's been arrested. He says he needs to be bailed out. And then instead of directing the victim to buy gift cards and call back with the serial numbers, more often now the scammers are arranging to go to the victim's home and actually pick up cash in person, which is a scary thought. We're not quite sure why they've shifted tactics like this, but it may be that during the height of the pandemic, many older adults were reluctant to go to a store and buy gift cards, but probably had a few $100s in the bank, in the house rather, or would be willing to go to an ATM machine to withdraw some money. So it's been a very common scam. We're still seeing it during the pandemic with this latest twist that instead of pretending to be the grandson, the caller pretends to be a court official or a bail bondsman. And again, there's an urgency
The caller will say, if you don't give me the bail money today, it'll be 2 or 3 more weeks before we can get your grandson out on bail. That's part of the scam, is to create that sense of urgency. There's another common scam that we've seen an uptick during the pandemic, and that's the so-called utility scam, where the caller claims he's with your local utility, that you're behind in your payments, and if you don't pay up today, you're going to have your electricity cut off. And I learned from my own experience just how compelling a call this can be. My beloved mother died last year, but a couple of years before that, I was walking around my office one day and my cell phone rang, and it was my mother. And she sounded more hysterical than I've ever heard her sound in my entire life. She was screaming into the phone. She lived in Manhattan with my son. And she said, Gary, Con Edison called. I owe them $800. I'm behind. And if I don't pay them right now, they're going to turn off my electricity. And it happened to be a very hot day in August. She was saying, there's a heat wave. I can't go without electricity. I said, Mom, it's a scam. You've heard me talk about it. Don't fall for it. And she screamed back into the phone, it's not a scam. It's real. They're going to turn off my electricity. And she then told me that they had given her a callback number to call to make sure it was really Con Ed calling. So I asked her, well, what was the phone number that they gave you? Was it something like 1-800 Con Ed? I wasn't sure of the exact number, but I knew it started 1-800 Con Ed or something like that. And she said, no, they gave me a 917 number to call back. So I said to my mom, Mom, you just called back the scammers and they told you that you owe the money. You really don't. Finally, after about 10 or 15 minutes, I calmed her down. She was literally on her way to the store to buy the gift cards when she called me. She went back home, and then I spoke to her again, and I said, Mom, you do realize, by the way, that my son, your grandson, is living with you, and he pays the Con Ed bill automatically online every month. You don't even pay the Con Ed bill. And when I said that, my mother's reaction was to say, oh my God, Gary, you're right. I feel so stupid. But I said, Mom, it's not about stupidity. It's about emotions. It's a broiling hot day. They threatened you with having your electricity and air conditioning turned off, and you were scared and you weren't thinking clearly. But it's a clear example of how scammers work and how they can prey on people's emotions. Now, during the pandemic, we've also seen an uptick in charity scams. People want to be generous and supportive of those in need during the pandemic, but there are scammers out there who are trying to take advantage of that. In this case, it's generosity, the emotion that the scammers are trying to prey on. So if you do want to be supportive and be generous, do so through a legitimate charity. Make sure the charity is legitimate. You can go online at the AG's website, which is in the chat room and a chat box rather, and verify it. Do some research before you contribute to a charity. Contribute to charities you've heard of and dealt with before. If there's one thing I'd like to say, though, also about charitable solicitation, it's be very, very careful about responding to a telephone solicitation, because of one of two things could be happening here, and neither one of them is ideal. One possibility is that the caller is an out-and-out scammer trying to rip you off. The other possibility is that the caller really is a legitimate fundraiser, a telemarketer calling for a legitimate charity. But even if that's the case, on average in New York, the telemarketer, the fundraiser, keeps about 1/3 of every donation, and sometimes an even higher percentage than that. But if you write a check and you mail it directly to the charity, or you go on their website and make a direct contribution, they get 100 cents on the dollar of your contribution. So be mindful of that. Be generous, but be careful. We've also seen during the uptick, during the pandemic, an uptick in the so-called tech support scam. This is the scam where the caller says he's from Apple, Microsoft, Google, or some other tech company. He says your computer's running slowly or is broken. And he says, if you give me remote access to your computer, I can fix it for you. Now, the emotion that is being preyed on here isn't quite as clear as some of the others. It's not fear or love or generosity, but what I think it is that more and more we're so reliant on computers in our day-to-day lives. Here we are having a Zoom presentation as I speak, but we don't really know how computers work. We sure don't know how to fix them, and so we feel uncomfortable or uneasy or inadequate in some way about that, and that's what the scam takes advantage of. The scammer will ask you to give him remote, he'll say, go to your computer, and he'll give you instructions on how to give him remote access. And then once he gets in, he puts ransomware on your computer. He locks your computer so that you can't get at it. And the only way he'll unlock it, if at all, is if you go and buy gift cards and call back with a serial number. So it's a very dangerous scam. And what's interesting is that whereas most of these scams work about 1 in 50 telephone calls, it's estimated that the tech support scam works 1 in 6 calls. It's a very, very effective scam because we all use computers nowadays and rely on them. And when someone says it's broken or running slowly and they can fix it, it's tempting to listen and to go for that. Now, you've heard me mention several times that the scammers are asking for gift cards. That's become the method of choice that the scammers use. Up until a year or two ago, more often they would tell you to go to the bank or to a Western Union shop and wire the money. But what's happened is that the banks and Western unions have now trained their tellers so that if you walk in and you say, my grandson's been arrested, or the IRS called, or something to that effect, they are going to warn you that this is a scam. But if you go to any store that sells gift cards, the local pharmacy, whatever, and you buy gift cards, the likelihood that the cashier is going to engage in conversation with you about why you're buying them is much smaller. And so that's become the method of choice. It's gotten so bad that the Federal Trade Commission has now actually made it illegal for anyone over the phone to ask you to pay by gift card. So as soon as someone does that, you know they're a scammer, but it's a huge red flag. It's the way that scammers are now getting them. So how can we stay safe on the phone? Well, here's for starters, think of the phone as a one-way street. And by that we mean it's only safe to give out information over the phone if you made the call to a number you know to be the legitimate number of your bank, your credit card company, a government agency, etc. When someone calls you, you can never really be sure they are who they say they are. And what they do nowadays to make the call seem more believable is they use a technique called caller ID spoofing. They can make your caller ID say whatever they want it to say. So if the caller is claiming to be an IRS agent, they can make your caller ID say IRS, Internal Revenue Service, or even the Washington, D.C. phone number of the IRS. If the caller is claiming to be your grandson, says he's been arrested in Canada, they can make your caller ID show a Montreal telephone number, for example, even though the caller could be anywhere in the world. So you can't be sure the caller is who they say they are just because caller ID seems to confirm it. What we do suggest you do is to stand that on its head and use caller ID as a screening tool and simply don't answer the phone unless you recognize the number. It's not a perfect tool. You may miss a couple of calls you wanted to take, but if it's a legitimate call, they'll leave a message and you can call back. If it's a scammer, they probably won't leave a message, but even if they do, you can simply delete the message. Now, as an example of how it's not perfect, a couple of years ago, my cell phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, and so I practiced what I preach, and I didn't answer. And then there was a voice message left, and it turned out that it was the Attorney General who urgently needed to speak to me about a case. So, of course, I called her right back. We had a good laugh about why I didn't answer the call in the first place, but she understood that, this is the safety practice that we need to follow. Sometimes people will say to me, Gary, here's what I do. When I see it's a number I don't recognize, I answer the call. I let them talk for a minute or two. Then I blab away for 10 minutes and waste their time. Then I go, ha ha, and hang up the phone. This is not a good idea for two reasons. One is that you just wasted 10 or 15 minutes of your own time. But more importantly, these calls are generated by a computer program that can tell if a live voice answers the phone. And if so, the program is designed to keep calling that number, and your number may also get told to other scammers who will call you as well. The bottom line is the more of these calls you answer, the more you're going to get. The fewer you answer, the fewer you're going to get, although you're still going to get plenty of them. Some of the telephone providers are now providing warnings. You'll see it says spam or potential spam. And what they're doing is they're using a technology called stir shaken. It's an acronym having nothing to do with James Bond and martinis. If you're a James Bond film fan, you'll know what I mean. It's an acronym that represents the technology that can tell whether caller ID spoofing is being used. So essentially what the phone company is warning you is that the number that originated this call is not the same number that you're seeing on your caller ID. And if you see a warning like that, do not answer the phone. That's a perfect example of one you would simply want to not answer. As more and more of us are not answering the phone unless we recognize the number, the scammers are trying to trick us through a technique called neighbor spoofing. They spoof a number in your same area code, sometimes even in your same exchange, hoping you'll think it's a local business, it's a neighbor, it's someone I know, and you'll answer the phone on that basis. Don't fall for it. Don't answer the phone unless you recognize the entire number. They're also using same number spoofing, and I have to admit I fell for this. My cell phone rang a couple of years ago, and I saw my own number. I thought, that's weird. Can you butt dial yourself? What's this about? So I answered the call, and it was a telemarketer trying to sell me an extended warranty on a car, which is one of the classic rip-off calls going on nowadays. I answered the call out of curiosity, thinking, can you dial your own number or butt dial yourself? The answer is no. So if you see your own number appear, it means they're trying to trick you into answering. Don't answer. There are also apps that you can buy for a small monthly fee. And what they do is they monitor your incoming calls, and if they can tell it's spam, you hear one ring and it gets cut off. I'm really not in a position to endorse any of these companies. There are several of them out there. But just to give you a sense of where you might start looking, two of the more well-known ones are, one is called Nomorobo, Nomorobo. Another is called RoboKiller. Those are just a couple of examples. There are others out there. If you're interested in that service, you can do some research and find out. Personally, I choose not to use one of those services. I simply try not to answer the phone if I don't recognize the number. People often ask me nowadays about the do not call registry. You register your phone number, right? And then telemarketers aren't supposed to call you, but you're getting a million of these scam calls anyway. So the question is the do not call registry worth signing up for? And the answer is yes and no. Yes, because legitimate US-based companies will not call you once you've signed up for the do not call list. Telemarketers calling on behalf of newspaper subscriptions and magazine subscriptions and cable TV channels won't call you anymore. But it's not going to stop the scammers who are using caller ID spoofing. So it's going to reduce the number of calls you get, but it's not going to stop them. One thing that's of interest is just yesterday, New York State enacted a new law that now makes text messaging subject to the do not call registry, meaning that if you're on the do not call registry, you can't be texted or phoned. This is a new innovation, but again, it's not going to stop the scammers. And while I'm mentioning texting, I should say that we've seen a huge increase in text scams where people are getting scams saying that they're from Amazon about a delivery you're expecting or FedEx about a delivery you're expecting. And then they ask for personal identifying information or even a fee. So be very careful. The text you get may not be from the real person. If you get a text and you're not sure it's legitimate, instead of responding to the text, go on the website, contact the company directly, or take out your telephone and call them. So for example, just to use a telephone example, I got a call a couple of years ago and the caller says, "This is American Express. It looks like there are some unauthorized charges on your account." Did I speak to that person? No. I hung up the phone. I took out my credit card. I looked up the toll-free number and I called American Express. And it turned out they really were calling me. The first guy really was an American Express employee, but I couldn't have been sure of that. But when I called them back, I was 100% sure that I was talking to an American Express employee and could safely provide personal identifying information. As more and more of us have online accounts, one of the weaknesses that we all suffer from is weak passwords, especially as we get older because we're worried about forgetting the password. And so many of us tend to use passwords like a grandchild's name or your street address or your date of birth, something that you won't forget. The problem is that the scammers will research you sometimes. They'll get your username and then they'll try out some of these passwords to see if they work. And if they do, you're going to be in trouble. So you want to choose a password that you can remember, but no one else can, can figure out or guess about you. And one way of doing that is to think of a song, a poem, a figure of speech you'll never forget. Make an acronym out of the first letter of each word. So for example, President Lincoln's Gettysburg Address in 1863 famously began 87 years ago. If you made an acronym out of that, FSA-SYA, capitalize one of the letters, maybe put a number at the end, no one's going to be able to figure out that your password is FSA-SYA. And if you can't remember it, as long as you can remember 87 years ago, you'll be okay. My mother's Gmail password was the first letter from the Shakespearean line, "To be or not to be, that is the question." And then she had a number right after that she could easily remember. I asked her mom, "What's your password?" She couldn't spit it out. She couldn't tell me what it was. But when she sat at her iPad, she could type it out easily because she knew it was the first letter of the words, "To be or not to be, that is the question." Another vulnerability we have is those security questions that we're asked to answer when we open a new account, right? You open a new online account and they ask you a security question so that if you forget your password, you're prompted to answer the security question. And the vulnerability is that you choose a question, the answer to which can easily be Googled about you. So if your security question is your city of birth or your mother's maiden name, for example, those are easily obtained pieces of information that a scammer might get. So what they might do if they have your username is enter some gibberish passwords to prompt the question and then hope it's a question that they can then Google about you and figure out the answer to. So you want to choose a security question that the answer to which cannot be found about you online, such as what was the name of your pet dog when you were a kid or something like that. My question that I sometimes have used is favorite athlete or childhood hero. There was a player for the New York Knicks. I'm not going to say the name, but he was a famous player. He was my hero. You can't Google me to find out who my favorite athlete was as a kid, but I'll always know the answer to that, and I'll never forget it. I should briefly touch on some email tips because there are email scams out there as well. The most common one is called phishing, P-H-I-S-H-I-N-G. And what happens here is you get an email from what looks to be like your bank or your credit card company or a government agency. It says there's a problem that you need to address and asks you to click on the link. When you click on the link, you go to a website, but it's not the real website of your bank. It's a lookalike website. And then when you get there, they ask you to confirm you're the customer they're trying to reach by inputting your social security number or your password or information like that. So please be very careful about replying to unsolicited emails. If you're not sure that it's a legitimate email, instead of responding to it, go directly to the website of the company and contact them that way. Get out your phone and call them so that you can be sure you're talking to them. Be very wary about responding to unsolicited emails. And then lastly, I'm just going to emphasize this again, when you're pretty much in almost any context as a consumer, but particularly when you're shopping online, you want to have a secure site. You want to pay by credit card and not debit card. What do I mean by that? You're on a secure website. Well, if you think a secure website is one that uses encryption technology so that your data is coded, encrypted in cyberspace so that it can't be intercepted by a hacker. Websites that do not use encryption technology can easily be hacked. So how do you know if the website you're on is secure? Well, if you look at the browser box of your computer, every web address begins with the letters HTTP, then there's a colon, then 2 backslashes, and then the rest of the web address. If the website is secure, there'll be an S in there. It will begin HTTPS, then the colon, the 2 backslashes, and the rest of the address. Before you enter personal identifying information, you want to make sure you're on a secure website. Having given you that piece of advice, don't take it too far, because there are a lot of websites that don't secure the pages where you're just browsing around and looking. They only secure the page where you're checking out and providing personal identifying information. So don't be deterred if the website on their home page, you don't see the S, but if you don't see it on the checkout page, that's another concern. You can also see if a website is secure because there's a padlock logo that will appear in your browser box, but we have seen instances where that has been spoofed. So it's a good thing to see, but you still want to make sure that the S is in there because they can't spoof the S in HTTPS. And so, Christy, that's it for me for now. I'm glad to take any questions you may have. I put the contact information for the AG's office in the chat box. You can reach us at 1-800-771-7755. You can call us at our website, rather, it's ag.ny.gov.
Thank you, Gary. It doesn't look like there are any questions. You've covered a lot of information. Thank you for all the good tips to keep us safe and taking your time to speak today. I would like to thank everybody else who's joined for joining, and please join again next week. Our topics will be presentations on mortgage foreclosure and tenant eviction and the benefits of irrevocable and pool trust. Again, thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Stay safe, everybody.